What's going on, everyone? We are continuing the saga today, talking about more free-to-play strategies slash mistakes slash things you gotta think about. With this video, talking about one of the worst mistakes that you can make. And to be honest, I was in the midst of it before I really started to do a deep dive on all the sort of endgame build potentials and what you actually want out of your builds. So what are we actually talking about today? The inheritance system. Okay, the inheritance system has multiple different options for you to choose from. And presumably we are getting a fifth option in the future with those demon books, but we do not have any confirmation on what that will entail just yet. So where does the mistake come in? What did I do that really messed us up? Well, first off, when you dive into the inheritance system, when you first get past the gold portion of upgrading just your attack, defense, and HP, you get access to the elite inheritance here. And well, each one of these nodes requires certain type of books, time allotted to upgrade it. And then the middle nodes are going to require elite packs and also time allotted, as well as gold. But gold is usually something you have a major surplus of, and you can use gold to speed up the time allotment to get each node. The side nodes are actually going to be applicable to every single build. So you can only use one inheritance at a time. The inheritance that you choose will give you access to these middle nodes, but the side nodes are always in effect. So the idea here is, okay, well, there's not really that much of a mistake I can make because I can just level up the side nodes and I'll always get bonuses. Well, that's not necessarily true. As far as I know, and correct me if I'm wrong, I've Googled this a lot. I've tried to find something about it. Back in patch 1.5.5, there was this kind of thought that we would be able to reset the inheritance. I can't find anything about it, so if I'm wrong, let me know in the comment section down below, please. But since we cannot reset the inheritance, all of our elite packs that we put into these middle nodes are not refundable, as well as the time that you put into it, as well as the books, etc., etc. So what does that mean? Well, every single build, with the exception of counter-based builds, wants to use the ghost. Period. Every single build wants to use the ghost. That's just how powerful this is. Why? Well, the ghost is offering really, really important bonuses. And this is where kind of my misunderstanding of how the end game builds truly function comes in. So with the Ranger, this is the one that I assumed that the Whisperer would want to use. Okay, it works with extra dagger damage, it works with extra crit rates. Okay, this is like, it just seems exactly what I want, right? I want to be crit with the Whisperer, I want extra dagger damage, I want to be able to get extra crit damage, all that good stuff. When you actually look at the end game builds and what your actual damage profile comes from with the Whisperer, it is vast majority adventurer damage, and then a vast majority skill damage. And you might be thinking, oh, well, isn't the dagger skill based? Like, isn't that where the damage is coming from? Actually, not necessarily. It's all the other skills that you're triggering while using daggers that really the damage comes from. So yes, dagger is a portion of it, and the Ranger isn't horrible by any means in the early game especially, but as you start reaching the bottom tiers, well, instead of getting really important bonuses for progression, you are still just increasing your kind of value with daggers and specifically the Whisperer build, whereas the Ghost is giving you skill damage, the Ghost is giving you skill crit rate, which is very, very hard to come by. It's giving you a ton of value with just overall attack percentage bonuses, and arguably the most important one is when you get down to a lot of these kind of big nodes, the Ghost Princess and the Crybaby, you're going to be reducing the opponent's skill damage reduction, which is really important for PvP, but also stunning. CC is incredibly important. This is going to actually remove some potential control immunity from the NPCs, which gives you more value in terms of being able to stun and progress even further. Now you might be thinking, okay, well, how is this like a huge mistake? Isn't this just for the Whisperer users? Well, no, actually. You Sky Splitter users, your Reaper staff users, all of the builds want to go with the Ghost. So any other elite packs invested at any point past the initial blurb here, and I'll explain what I mean by that in just a moment, are a waste. You should be investing everything into the Ghost. It's also part of the reason where in some builds, like for example, the Whisperer, when I pop on over to my heroes and brands, I want to be picking a lot of options that don't have the Ghost book because I want to use all of my Ghost books and actually progressing my legacy. And you can see this has really hindered me, at least especially with the Whisperer here, because I've picked up the Joker. I have the Spring Orchid, which is two of the better options for the Whisperer, but I actually haven't been able to actually get more copies because I hadn't had the books because I was progressing the Ranger legacy. So I'm doubling up. The Rogue is something that I want to omit from my Whisperer build and potentially go with a different brand just because I want to preserve the books, because it's so important to have those available to you. Now, okay, well, yes, Whisperer, obviously the build I'm using. Skeleton build, which is oftentimes what people go with the Sky Splitter because it works with the Sword Chi, which is what Sky Splitter's working with as well. Also a mistake. Now, unfortunately for myself, Skeleton's investment time is significantly lower than the Ranger time. The Ghost, as you go around this circle, starts to become higher and higher in terms of the amount of time it requires to upgrade each node. So if you are the Sky Splitter user and you have invested into the Skeleton, fortunately, you probably haven't spent as much time in the skeleton tree. I guess this could also work in the opposite direction where it's like, okay, if you haven't spent as much time in the skeleton tree, you've probably used more books and you've probably used more elite packs, which can also be unfortunate. But you always want to be upgrading the Ghost. Now, there is a caveat to this, and this is where the early game comes in. For a lot of you really early game players, the goal is to go with the Ghost. But with upgrading your legacy, you'll notice these Roman numerals here that give you the tier of your specific legacy or your specific inheritance here. Every single build for the most part, even the Reaper Staff, even the Whisperer, and the Sky Splitter, you generally want to invest into the Bonelet here or the Skeleton here in the very early game. Get it to tier 2, and I've seen other people recommend even tier 3. But the reason why we want to get it to tier 2 or potentially even just 1 point, you don't need to put more than just one upgrade, just the initial upgrade from this, from the elite packs. And the reason why we're doing this is because we want access to additional potential upgrades from our weapons. And arguably more important is actually getting access to the higher levels in your adventurer. Without getting to the tiers in your inheritance, you will be hard locked in terms of what you can access in your upgrade potential. So the reason why we upgrade the Skeleton is because the time allotted for upgrading these nodes is drastically lower than every other legacy or inheritance in the game. Take, for example, this first Roman numeral upgrade, the tier 2 inheritance. It takes 30 minutes for the Skeleton legacy. In the Knight, it takes 50. In the Ranger, it's even further. As you can see with the tier 2, I don't even know if I can see it anymore. I can show you kind of the later ones. Let's just take a node here. Let's just take this Ranger Shadow. Ranger Shadow 2, 13 hours and 30 minutes. Actually, that's a good comparison. Okay, great. What is that in the Little Knight? 10 hours and 30 minutes for the Skeleton. It would be 7 hours and 30 minutes. And for the Ghost, well, it's actually even longer, 16 hours and 30 minutes. You could see the drastic amount of time increasing that it requires you. So we go with the Skeleton to get these initial nodes completely done, and all these nodes will still benefit you. So great. Pick up one upgrade in the Roman numeral 2 here, tier 2 Skeleton Legacy. Although it costs you elite packs, worth it to get the massive upgrades for your gear, for your adventurer. Some cases, depending on how many books you have, what build you're going with, all that good stuff, there's all sorts of dependence. You can push towards tier 3 to get access to more upgrades. Again, you will be locked behind a certain level cap in your gear and your adventure if you do not push your legacy further, which is why we're doing it, because the Ghost takes so long to upgrade. So push it to tier 3, maybe, depending on your build, again. Get those upgrades, and then immediately dump everything into the Ghost, no matter what. At no point should you be doing what I did at the beginning, which is upgrading these middle nodes, which I viewed as potentially very powerful. But guess what? I invested a significant amount of my elite packs. And actually, this also still, in some cases, applies to the Ghost as well. Yes, the Ghost is the inheritance that you want to go with. No doubt about it. This is the one. However, you don't want to be upgrading all these middle nodes. For example, element mastery here, you want to max this out. It's one of the most important ones with the massive fire and lightning, and more importantly, the control immunity rate ignore, which helps you CC. Incredibly important. But you don't necessarily want to max out coward. The extra skill damage, while it is nice, it's not necessarily super important in the early game. Same thing with mischief. The skill crit rate, while extremely important later on, you really want to be reaching these later tiers, and saving those elite packs can definitely help you out. You want to be reaching the Crybaby. You want to be reaching the Yawner tier, which is going to be massive bonus to your attack stat. You want to be reaching the Ghost Princess, the Ghost Trick, and well, all those massive bonuses. Okay, those are the keys. Why? Because it's going to cost you so many elite packs when you get to these later stages that if you aren't properly allocating, you are going to run out. And elite packs, you can never have enough of them. You can never have enough of them. Same thing applies to books. You can never have enough of them. So the worst mistake you could be making as a free-to-play player is to invest into a legacy that's presumably good for your build. Oh, I'm Whisper build. I like daggers. Oh, I'm a Sky Splitter build. I like skeleton because I like sword chi. Well, just make sure that this is truly the legacy or the inheritance that you want to go with. I will say one of the few exceptions are counter-based builds. The Ghost isn't as good for those because you don't rely as heavily on the bonuses that the Ghost will provide. But if you're going Reaper Staff, if you're going Sky Splitter, if you're going Whisper, which are the three most used builds, the Ghost is still applicable for you. And to be honest, I could dive into all the nuance here. And okay, well, if I'm going the Sky Splitter, do I still want to be investing into, tier 3 skeleton or Whisper or Reaper Staff, etc.? Or do I want to go with a little bit of a different strategy? That's where an in-depth build guide for each individual weapon and overall game plan is necessary. All I wanted to mention was that before you're spending a bunch on a legacy that seems pretty good, with all those elite packs, just make sure that that's where your end goal is going to be. I made the mistake of, I read somewhere that the Ranger Legacy was a really good one for the early game progression of Whisperer. What I didn't realize is it's not just like, oh, use it and, upgrade everything in the early game and get that nice and rolling to get you boosted in progression. It's literally unlock it. Like literally unlock it and maybe pick up the skill crit rate or the weapon crit rate here at the beginning tier, and then don't actually pump extra elite packs into this. Never ever do that unless it's the actual legacy that you're looking for, in this case the Ghost for most people. Let me know what you think in the comments section down below. As I said, every build is slightly different in terms of the strategy that you want to go with, but this is just a general thing that you should be thinking about as you go along. And to be honest, everything is recoverable. If you're a whale, it's one of the reasons why I said the worst free-to-play mistake, because if you're a whale, if you can spend money, you can make up a lot of the presumable mistakes that you're making throughout the game. Of course, if you just start your progression and do the correct quotations thing in the game, then you'll progress faster. So this even applies to spenders. But again, it most impacts the free-to-play when you make a mistake. That's just how these games go. But let me know what you think in the comment section down below. Thanks for watching, everyone, and I will see you all for a video soon.